We say, I don't want to be his friend anymore. I don't want to be near them anymore. And we take a very small situation and we blow it out of proportion and make it very big, just for something small. Why? In Malaysia, you call it miscommunication. What I like to call it is misperception. Why? Your reality is that maybe when you were very young, you were criticized about your clothes for a long, long time. You were a fashion emergency. So because you were a fashion emergency, you were criticized your whole life. And so recently you've gotten fashion conscious. So if anybody says anything about your shirt or your clothes, you're highly sensitized. Whereas to another person, it's not such a big issue. So therefore, what people say to us, what people perceive of us, is completely different than what we perceive of the same situation. Completely different. Therefore, how we react to the other person, how we act out, pay attention very carefully. This is the key. How we react to the other person is dependent on how narrow or broad our mind is. If our mind is very narrow due to lack of exposure, due to lack of study, and mostly due to lack of application of the Dharma teachings, we will be very sensitive, we will be very angersome, we will hold a grudge, we will always show a black face, we will always show ourselves not to be wrong. Always. And if we have responsibilities, if we have to do certain work, we run away. And when we run away, we think that we have escaped, but actually we open the doors for another negative situation to come even more. And we don't realize that. Most people run away from difficult situations. They escape, they run away, and they think to themselves, hey, I got away with it. I'm all right. See, I got it. I made it easy. Everything's all right now. But actually not. Actually not. If you examine carefully people who run away from difficult situations or they don't challenge and push themselves, and they can, the situations become more harder and more difficult, more harder and more difficult, more harder, eventually unable to handle. So temporarily, we escape from a situation so we don't have any sufferings. We escape from a situation so that we don't come across any difficulties. But the very fact that we escape is because we want to get away from difficulties. But in fact, we invite even more difficulties, only in grander and wider and bigger scales. So how do we deal with that? What I always say is, why is confession very strong? Because it is to verbalize what we have done. When we confess what we have done, there's no room to hide. When there's no room to hide, it doesn't fester. When it doesn't fester, it doesn't hide, it doesn't become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So keeping quiet about one's own faults is very damaging. Keeping quiet about another person's faults is patience. When we keep quiet about another person's faults, it's patience. But when we keep quiet about our own faults, it's very detrimental. On a psychological level, it's very detrimental. Psychosomatic diseases, psychosomatic problems arise from holding, hiding, and covering what we have done wrong. Psychosomatic is something that arises from the mind. Some physical ailment, some sickness, some outer difficulties that the source is not really the difficulties. The source is from the inside. Psychosomatic. So therefore, confession, talking, explaining is very, very powerful. When we do that, we heal. Psychosomatic disorders. Psychosomatic. No one has extra perception ears yet. Psychosomatic. Disorders that arise from internal but nothing actually external.
就是一种外在的一种病象，但是它是起源于内心的一个问题，内心的一个缺陷。
Psychosomatic disorders arise from hiding, covering, avoiding, and not facing one's own personal mistakes. So maybe some of us here is not confirmed about karma and Buddhas, and not confirmed about cause and effect, but we can be confirmed about psychosomatic disorders. It is scientific. That is hiding something inside, and it festers and becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and wider and wider. Then after a long, long time, it's very hard for someone to escape from it. Very, very hard. And that comes from escape, running away, avoiding, not facing, and keeping quiet and hoping everybody forgets. Everybody will forget. Definitely, everybody will forget, but you won't. And it will come up again and again. And you may even change your whole set of friends, but you're going to have to change them again and again, or you have very little friends. People who have very little friends, doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they're very narrow. It just means they're very, very petty. They look at small things, they don't look at the big things. They create a lot of suffering for themselves and people around them. To understand what I'm talking about psychologically is not enough. We have to apply it. We have to apply it. Some of us have been in Dharma for 2 years. Some of us have been Dharma 3 years. Some of us have been Dharma 5 years. You have to open up your chest and say, what's the result? From the time I started Dharma till now, what's the result? Then if we say, oh, my teacher is very bad. Oh, the Dharma students around me is very bad. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I'm busy. Those are not excuses. Because Dharma practice is not the half hour we sit in front of our altar practicing. Dharma practice is every day we deal with people and how we deal with people. Every single day, how we deal with people is Dharma practice. That's very, very important to know. So